Yeah, another video. Alright, LudditeReturns makes a really snarky, lousy, rotten video in response to the gray guy. And, he claims the same old stuff. He's been straw-mined or quote-mined or some other kind of thing. And they're just clips from actual videos. And the video is really me talking back to you. And the video really happened, and they're just clips from the video, so I don't know how you can complain. And really, if you're going to complain, you know what? You ought to just itemize the complaints. You ought to prove your complaint. Show the evidence of the wrongdoing. But instead, you just make blanket statements, which is the typical of the slanderers, and that's all you people are. You're butthurt, and so now you're going to whine and complain, but you're losing the argument. You're just proving the point. And you're taking this low road, and getting applauded by the typical little lying skanky cunts and such. Fine. I don't. Well, whatever. I'll play part of his video. I mean, there's a clip in here where he takes, because Gray has a quote from Tupac or some urban legend type. And I have no real use for urban culture, black culture. Screw it. I don't, it's crap. It's garbage. But yeah, it doesn't mean they can't be philosophers. Doesn't mean they don't come up with little nuggets of gold now and then. And, he just was using that like somehow that means something because, it's an urban black man. It's an urban black man quote. It's somehow, it's suspect on its face. On its face, it's suspect. Which is just more of his pretentious arrogance, this snobbery of these elitists. I have an education, therefore I'm a superior person. Well, fuck you, you're not. You're not a superior thinker, even. Which is really, you should be humiliated and embarrassed that, with a high school education, I can, kick you all over the field of logical and intellectual conversation. It's the truth. You're getting beat badly.
Recently, I visited graytaich0's homepage, and there's a quote from Tupac there. It says something to the effect of, "The only fear of death I have is resurrection." Right? And there's nothing like a quote from this guy. That just screams out, here's a guy who I want to engage in philosophic discourse with, right? Now, here's a guy whose intellect must just be absolutely brimming. Now, graytaich0's videos have the intellectual equivalency of like an episode of Barney or SpongeBob or something. And this is not in and of itself why I find him to be distasteful or his videos to be distasteful. It's interesting because there's been a long-standing battle, if you will, between cultural anthropologists and ethical philosophers as to whether or not there exists in human societies, from society to society and in time, certain universals relative to the ethical sphere in human experience, right? And the cultural anthropologists tend to say, no, look at this kind of hyperpluralism that we see and the disparities that we see diachronically and from culture to culture. And the ethical philosophers tend to say, well, there are certain universals. And I'll have to side with the latter here. Because one example would be this. Cowardice has never been extolled as a virtue in any human society, to be a coward. And you, graytaich0, are a coward. Everything about you screams this out. Right? The way in which you hide behind InMendham in video after video and rip people from context and quote mine people in their videos. This is a disgusting display of cowardice.
Show it. You should display it. You displayed the disgusting urban man. You showed an image of the disgusting urban person. Why don't you show us a clip that demonstrates how he manipulated your content, your voice, your image in some intentionally derogatory or malicious way, besides you just saying what you said, which was preposterous nonsense, and I made you out for the fool that you are. Yeah.
Cowardice. And that pretty much makes you universally despisable.
Well, that's even a stupid thing for an intelligent man to say, right? I mean, you really have to demonstrate universal despisability. You can't just make a claim out of it. You could say that should make you universally despisable or despised. I mean, wouldn't that be the correct way to say it? You should put an ought or a should in there? It's not really a statement of fact, is it? You're the subjective lunatic who can't figure out that suffering matters, and yet somehow you think it should be universally despised because somebody took some video clips and arranged them together? Oh, yeah, That makes sense. Sorry, I'll talk in my silly voice. That sounds kind of fishy to me.
So, congratulations, graytaich0. So, InMendham argues that, well, informed and rational people concede determinism.
Would you use the same mocking voice if you were quoting Einstein-y on the subject? I don't think you would, because you're scared that Einstein would crawl out of his grave and beat you to death with one of his leg bones, wouldn't you? Yeah, I mean, really. So this is what you've got to resort to? I mean, I could talk in some kind of sissified manner. I'm a sissy philosopher, and I use big fancy words so no one can understand what I'm saying, so I can say something completely silly like unicorns exist, and they don't know that's what I just said because I used the technical word for unicorn. Yeah, I could do that. You want to do that? Back and forth forever? Fuck that. Yeah, fuck that.
You know. And maybe in the mid to late 19th century, this would be true to proceed with this kind of assurity, I suppose, in one's position. But
oh, whatever. So there's some sort of grand evidence that there is real randomness. You've got proof of it now, or something. Sorry, you don't. Okay, even quantum mechanics, it isn't proof of anything. Okay, photons aren't reading our minds. Seriously, fucktard. And if they did, they would read them as random crap, and they would respond randomly. So it still couldn't account for something called free will. Like free from what? Free from my knowledge? So I'm free to what? Say everything backwards and upside down even though I know better? I don't think so. I mean, I've said it in videos, but the only will worth having is a confined and restrained will. One that's been filtered and weed pulled out of it. A will that's been weeded to pieces, that is now exquisitely, beautifully tailored. You want a refined will, not a free will. Duh. Duh.
These are strange philosophic times, and times have changed, you know.
Well, that's what all you silly people are saying, right? All you silly, yeah, you don't got religion, but you got something like it. Okay, sorry, but if the shoe fucking fits, and the shoe's fucking fitting, you're all enamored with some sort of mystery in the universe when we know what we are, okay? We're fucking apes, and we know what apes came from, and they were fucking salamanders, and we know what salamanders came from, and it was goddamn green soup.
There's been a lot of good philosophic work on the nature of nomicity and nomological law. That is, that nomological laws are nothing but descriptions of states of affairs, right? And so there are different kinds of determinism, first of all.
Well, you want to play that game, go ahead, okay? There's no different kinds. It either is determined or it's not determined. There's no different kinds of determinism, okay? And what would interrupt the determinism? Oh, randomness. Okay, so it's either chaos or structured determinism. Now, I think it's quite obviously structured determinism, because most people aren't acting chaotically. Now, okay, they're stupid, and they do ignorant things, but we know exactly why they're doing them. It's because they have a hard dick or some other excuse. Okay, we can trace the cause and effect, and we don't see random and chaos at the source. No, we see explanations. As we trace the thing, we can find the explanations, the causes for the effect. Duh.
Logical determinism, going back to Aristotle and the sea ship battle, right? And Norman Swartz, the philosopher, does away with this in quick succession, if you will.
I doubt that he does. Okay, I mean, I have gone to the paper. I'll read it at my leisure. But whatever, there's no way he's going to undo determinism. He's not going to undo the fact that especially us, especially our intelligence, there's just nothing for, there's nothing, there's no evidence of anything else. Once you know something, you know it. You can't unknow it.
There's epistemological determinism, and I'll provide links to some of Norman Swartz's work on this. And then there's causal determinism, right? That is the postulation that there exists this omnipresent causal web of necessitation. And first of all,
causal web of necessitation. What is that gibberish?
There's no empirical evidence for this. There's none whatsoever. All we see, and Hume has made this point time and time again, or this point has been made, is what he called constant conjunction. And from this, it seems like typically determinists tend to move from the empirical reality of B follows from A to the postulation of necessity there. So it makes...
So whatever. I mean, he's just arguing that somehow they have demonstrated somehow that there isn't, like if I have the same circumstance, I set up the bowling pins, I roll the ball exactly the same way twice in a row, that somehow there'll be different results. When everything's absolutely identical. No, there won't be different results. It'll be the same result. There's nothing quantum or random or any of this crap, and you're just making it up, and you're clinging to it for no good reason. Because it's still, even if you could hurt the word determinism, which I don't even give a fuck about, but let's just say you could in some way make it non-deterministic, you haven't come close to finding anything free will. Okay, you could find random will, you could find chaos will, but you couldn't find anything called free will. So you're still out of luck fixing this or relating this to the question of free will. So again, bullshit on you.
Perfect sense to speak of causal states of affairs proceeding without necessitation, right? So, I mean, determinism, I suppose, it has its value as a philosophic thesis on reality. But, that's InMendham proceeding in fundamentalist mode. To me,
well, whatever. What's fundamentalist about it? It's just a conclusion I've drawn from all the evidence. All the evidence points to determinism. No evidence, no real evidence, just made-up string theories and multidimensional bullshit, just theoretical crap made out of absolutely nothing, points to any kind of random chaos. Let's just fuck up the mix. Yeah, none of that happens, okay? You can claim it happens, but you have no evidence of it happening. So I'm just going where all the evidence points, and you're somehow making that sound like fundamentalism or some lunatic religion, right? Because you go exactly where all the evidence points. And you have so much evidence for it that there's no reason not to convict. There's no reason to not put your hand up and say, yes, it's a deterministic universe, okay? Nobody, all right, nobody is endowed with a college education from birth. Nobody. It just doesn't happen.
Merely to just, so for example, with value, and calling into question whether or not value has a transperspectival reality. What is the response of the anti-natalist has only been to merely, when challenged on this point, typically one of two things happens. One is, well, if you don't recognize this, that makes you evil.
Yeah, well, whatever. It makes you stupid is what the argument is, okay? I've made the point that 5-year-olds would all get this unanimously. If I polled all the, 1 billion 5-year-olds on planet Earth, I'm not going to have any problem having them all be able to recognize that there's a huge difference between feeling good and feeling bad. Huge, gigantic, colossal difference, and it's all the difference that matters. Okay, they'd say, yes, it matters a lot, all right, whether I have a nail in my eye or I don't have a nail in my eye. It matters a lot, okay, a big amount, okay, and as soon as they say any amount at all, we've acknowledged value. And somehow you educated fucktards go to school to somehow learn that, no, nails in your eye doesn't matter. 1 trillion people could have a nail in their eye and it goddamn just doesn't matter. And that's just goddamn nonsense. It's so fucking imbecilic. I can't imagine why you would believe it, how you would believe it, how can you construct it. So yeah, it is as retarded as Noah's Ark theory. It's more retarded. Noah's Ark is more plausible than that and then the theory that if a trillion people had a nail in their eye, it wouldn't matter. That it wouldn't be preferable to not having a trillion people with a nail in their eye. That truth seems so much more plausible than any fable of religion. Jeez. And you can't get it. And you're dumb enough to fall for it. Why? Oh, there must be some self-interest. That's right, because you don't want to be accountable for your behavior, quite obviously. Selfish fuck.
That's so fucking stupid. There's that option. And then there's option B, which is merely to insist upon the presupposition, the very thing in question.
Well, again, how can the very thing be in question? That's right. There is. You said it's a supposition. I'm saying it's demonstrated by my own personal experience. So right there, the trial's over. Okay, because I've personally experienced consciousness. I know it has substance. Okay, it might just be an illusion in my head, but it's one hell of an illusion, as Einstein would say. It's one fucking goddamn amazing goddamn an illusion. And if we don't invest in its reality, it would be just nonsensical to every neuron in my body would raise its hand and say, no, I vote against pretending it doesn't exist. Because, yeah, it knows it exists. It's saying it exists. It's real. This is something. This isn't nothing. This is something. It's something fucking profound and meaningful. Pliers, no brain, no sentience, not meaningful. Sentient being, meaningful. Goddamn, it's really fucking easy.
Which is how InMendham proceeds. So the video creating life is full of a bunch of straw man and false accusations.
Well, prove it. Why don't you demonstrate one? Why don't you show us a little bit of fucking evidence for a change, right? Instead of just making your slandering closing statements. You show up to a trial and just sit there and make your closing statement. Well, I saw him murder him, and I saw the murder, and it was all over the place. There was blood everywhere. Oh, yeah, I have no evidence for any of this shit. I'm just going to make up a goddamn story. Well, that's bullshit, okay? You get thrown out of goddamn court with bullshit like this, fella.
InMendham loves to claim that, well, you non-anti-natalist, you just aren't recognizing the cold, hard facts of life. And
yeah, well, you're running from them, that's right, and you've embraced a philosophy, quite obviously. I've said it's a non-starter. We got nothing to really have a conversation about. If you don't get that suffering matters, then you don't get anything, okay? This value thing is the most important subject there is. There's no other. You can't come up with a word or a subject that's more important than getting value right. If you don't get value right, all the other conversations don't mean anything because it all impacts the value thing. It's all built out of the value, and it affects the value quanta, the value constituents. So how the fuck can we have a conversation about anything, whether or not people should use starch when they iron their shirts? We can't have a conversation about anything if we haven't recognized what the value is that's going to be exchanged in any human activity conducted. And you're not accepting the fact that the value matters. So of course you're not going to get the argument because you're not getting the thing that means something. You don't get what numbers are. So of course you can't count. You can't add 2 plus 2 and get 4, but you don't know what a goddamn 2 is and what another 2 is. You got no conception of what's being exchanged because you're goddamn fucking psychotic like your pal Nietzsche.
And no, that's not true. It's not that we aren't recognizing said facts. It's just that our response to the facts in question is different.
Well, what is there is no different response. Your response to the fact that nature is insane, that it has no judgment, it's created a game that has no fucking Marcus Aquinas-Berry rules. If I made a game on planet Earth, right, like soccer or football, and I applied the same rules that nature applies, rules just as dumb, rules just as unfair, rules that completely rely on luck and silly things, right, and to the death, to dramatic consequential results, not little results, but huge impacts. All right, everybody would look at that game and throw the fuck up. They'd say, please, let's not play that fucking goddamn game. So don't tell me you've looked at reality. Don't tell me you've accepted it. Don't tell me you're paying any goddamn attention whatsoever. You've got little fucking unicorns floating around in front of your eyes. You've got little fluffy balls of glitter sprinkling down in front of your eyes. You have no fucking clue what kind of goddamn ghost ship you're riding. what kind of hell house this goddamn is, what kind of real Freddy's nightmare you're in for. Like Freddy's nightmares can start off all fluffy bunny, but it's going to get goddamn fucking ugly.
Right. So, for example, the anti-natalist mantra, end suffering and death. Okay, the first...
No, end suffering by not having kids, you dumb fuck. You said the word anti-natalism and you never talk about anti-natalism. You talk about some other fucking subject. The subject is whether you have a right to impose on a new life form your optimism that everything's going to be just swell. That's the fucking subject, shithead. It's not about fucking goddamn death, you goddamn idiot.
First part is one argument, the second part another. And his descriptive claim, if you will, riddled with emotionalism that, well, none of us are immortal, seems to kind of presuppose that immortality would be of positive value.
Well, go ahead, explain it to me. Explain how when all of a sudden you just say, oh, I'm bored. Right? Show me the time in your life where you could project, if your life just could continue, that there'd be some point in your life when you have no associations, no connections to other people that you want to preserve or that you think you could be a help to them. You have no usefulness. You have no political agenda. You have nothing's wrong in the world. It's all fixed good enough and you can get the fuck out. Right? We know we die, and we want to die because we get sick, and we get ill, and we get dilapidated. But if we didn't get any of those things, are you going to tell me that you just somehow run out of things to do? Okay? That there isn't enough adventure to be had in the world? I'm in this limited little tiny world, and it could take me 1,000 years just to explore it. 10,000 years maybe to fully explore just this world, or the world inside my own imagination. I think I got 1,000,000 years worth of goddamn adventures to take place inside of there. Alright, the only thing that's going to sit there and break that is the idea that, yes, there's too much pain and suffering tied to it. But liberated from that, okay, there's plenty of work to be done. So don't tell me you'd be done. Oh, I don't want to live a long time. And maybe you don't in theory. I don't in theory in the sense that, yes, but it would require no attachments. It would require me becoming completely segregated from existence, from all the things that tie you to it, all the things that force you to care and make you believe that you need to be here because you need to accomplish. Oh, God. Fuck you.
Do you want to live forever? I don't. Right? I don't find that something to be desirable.
I just don't even know why. Maybe it's not desirable, but I don't know why I'd find it a problem either. I'm not getting you. If this is supposed to be good, if what I'm doing now is good enough, why wouldn't I be able to do that forever? Like I said, what, I lack imagination? No, I have enough imagination to go a few million years anyway.
So, the fact of, well, in death, yes, there is one...
The point is it's a big fucking waste, okay? We live, we learn, we get skills, and to have what happen? For us to rot, for us to decompose right in front of our eyes when we're getting the strongest, when we're getting most capable, we start to physically turn into shit. And if that isn't a fucking grotesque, if that isn't insult to the goddamn injury, the injury of having the hard knocks of learning what is valuable, learning to care, learning all this shit that you had to goddamn learn, and then you learn it just so you can get goddamn cancer and die. I say that's fucking ludicrous.
Modus operandi, if you will. There's one way in which one can escape the boundaries of death, and that's to never live. To never live. And we see people, yeah, like all the Martians, they never lived. And goddamn, I'm not lamenting. I don't have any, there's no tears welling in my eyes. All the Venetians never lived. Millions of years of Venetians not living. Where's the tragedy? Explain the tragedy to me, okay? You're using emotionalism to, like, make a lament, like somehow nothing. Oh, it's being nothing. And it's not living. No, it's not you not living. It's just another version of this not living. And why am I supposed to care? Why am I supposed to find that compelling? I can't find a rational reason to think the Martians need to exist, and I can't find an emotional reason to think the Martians need to exist. And that's a glaring fact. And it informs my intelligence that the truth is me,
and this world are no better than Mars or Venus. That if you stopped it tomorrow, there wouldn't be the universe wouldn't be deprived, deprivated, or diminished.
In the quite literal sense, never to come into being, but even within the boundaries of life, we see people engage in this all the time. A kind of existential zombie-like existence, if you will.
Speak for yourself.
And I think most parents proceed in the mode of some variation of the golden rule, if you will. That is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right?
Which means what? Tie them up and force them to have sex they don't want because they're going to like it in the end, or some kind of crappy theory like that. It's like the child molester theory. Well, they molested me and I did okay, so I think I'll molest a few. Is that the kind of logic we're talking about? Helsinki syndrome, or whatever. Again, you're talking psychology, not philosophy.
That is a kind of retroactive consent, if you will, relative to coming into being, right? And
we know that just doesn't work, right? Because it's not retroactive consent, because people like me would say, shit, you made a real big mistake, a huge boner, okay? Really, you fucked up, all right? Because I think your world sucks, and I think you're assholes for eating this shit, and you're really assholes for converting this shit into me. Fuck you for that.
So, for example, in my case, yes, there are risks associated with life. There are risks perhaps severe enough relative to suffering that would render life incapable in a person to claim that it's worthy of affirmation.
And you say where that line is. That's the big joke here. You're the one saying that I'm competent to decide for you that, well, it's a 50-50 chance, or it's a 90-10 chance, or it's a 100-1 chance. Because I'll just change the level at which the deprivation or the misery or the suffering what level it has to be at before I'll say it's worth it for you to experience. I mean, that's just a ludicrous joke. It's just silly. Because we know that it's going to be an individual thing, and we know also that the psychology, once the animal's in the game, it's in the game, it's in the chase, all right? And it's not going to even perceive its misery. You're going to tell me that you're perfectly glad to be a retarded person who's going, has a smile on their face while they're banging themselves in the head with a fucking brick? You'd want to be born that individual and live their life? Say you're severely retarded and you have, maybe dozens of surgeries and all kinds of corrective this and corrective that, and you die when you're 21 years old. You want to live that life? Should I sentence you to it? If I had the power to, would you feel yourself fairly used if I did sentence you to it? Just imagine if I had the power. We could just go to the store and press a button. I could just press the button. Yeah, force Luddite to be a retard for 18 years. Force him to have too big a heart in his chest and have all kinds of surgeries and live a miserable, horrid, tortured existence for 21 fucking years. I should just go to the store and press the fucking button and you'd feel fairly treated? Fuck you.
In light of said suffering. And but the response that, well, the whole biosphere has to because of this associated risk.
Look, it's not because of the associated risk. The human equation is one equation, but yeah, life is. All right, what is it? It's replication for the sake of replication. It's a gladiator war. The winners last this long, and then they end up the losers. Everything ends up a loser in the end. Everything ends up just being food or fertilizer. It's ugly, hard, and miserable. And for you to glorify it into something else is just silly. It is corrupt from its very source. The very source of the mechanism that constructs it, natural selection, is corrupt. The selection is the crudest game you could describe. You couldn't make a game I suppose we could imagine a worse game, but you can't really imagine a game more insidious than to subject something to nature.
It seems quite the imposition, if you will, on the whole of existence to say, again, because my existence is something that is awful.
Well, again, that's a straw man argument. It's totally unfair. We're making a philosophical argument. Yeah, you learn from your personal experience. That's just the truth of it, okay? You have to have some suffering to have appreciation for suffering. It's just the way it works. So yeah, I'm going to tend to have to learn the hard way, and I learned the fucking hard way. I learned by having hard experience just how bad life can be, and I know it's a pill I'd never reach for again.
That no one else has the right, if you will, to be alive. This is the qualitative parentalism. Well, this is one aspect.
Well, whatever. No one has a right to be alive. Again, you're talking like they're being prevented, like they're behind some fence or some cage in a concentration camp somewhere, and we're going to deny them their life. I mean, it's just an abuse of language.
Of the qualitative parentalism that I was discussing. But the other is, well, there's
well, qualitative parentalism. Again, you're using the word parentalism when you're defending parentalism. You're defending people who just have a notion in their head that I want to have a kid, and that's somehow justified and sensible. And yet somebody else who has a whole explanation for why this is an imposition, why you can't impose your optimism on some new thing, that you don't have really a right to invest their welfare in your judgment, that's really not an ethically rational equation. It's just a fact. It's just not. The fact that you can't get consent is a fact. Now, so maybe in the future sometime we'll be able to clone ourselves and then clone our psychology, and then you could subject yourself to your own purgatory. You could impose it on yourself to replay the game and hope you get lucky.
Only varying degrees of badness, says my experience, or perhaps a theory of desire, if you will, in philosophic terms, frustrationism, that is negated by others, and InMendham doesn't recognize it.
I'm not going to negate it by others, and InMendham doesn't recognize it. Well, yeah, of course, I don't recognize irrational arguments, okay? I get the argument from God, and I get the argument from a DNA molecule. I get the argument from the non-existent don't exist, and therefore it can't be harmed. I get some kind of nonsense arguments that somehow it doesn't matter what the future is going to be. No, it does matter. We change the future. Our behavior implicates the future. We have a choice to behave A or B. We'll put things in a category of will be or won't be based on what we do, and it's a truth. Okay? Damage prevented is real. Prevention is a real thing. Okay? When you prevent harm, it has real value, even though the thing you prevented doesn't exist.
This fact whatsoever. So, the existential import that informs anti-natalism, I think it reasonable to contend, is comfortability. And we see that...
Whatever, comfortability. No, it's a freaking risk equation, and it's just obvious that there's no gain and vulnerability to pain. That's the truth of it. There's no material gain. There's nothing out there in the universe that says it needs to be scratched by a human scratcher. The human is necessary to the function. The human is necessary to saving it, rescuing it. There's a fire, and the humans are needed to put the fire out. No, the humans make the mess. The humans clean up a portion of the mess. It's completely illogical, completely inefficient.
In that, well, what could be a more comfortable state, if you will, than nothingness? Anti-natalists are kind of the worshippers of comfort. And two,
they're not worshippers. That's the whole fucking point. They're not worshiping a DNA molecule. They're not worshiping a god. They're just looking at the truth and saying, look, it's a dumb universe. We're just an infestation on the outside crust of a planetoid. We're caught up in a stupid, idiotic competition for actually no accomplishment, just to create winners so they can be losers. Create winners so they can be losers. Create winners so they can be losers. There's nothing here to be gained. There's nowhere to go. It's a zero, it's a less than zero-sum game, and even if you play it perfect, then you can get to the zero. But other than that, you're just going to lose.
The Dostoevskian underground man, if you will. My liver hurts, let it hurt all the more.
Well, that's real logical, right? There's a nail in my eye. Oh, I'll stick a nail in my other eye. There. I'm supposed to make sense out of that. I'm supposed to say that's comparable to Einstein, Dostoevsky. No, I'm sorry. If he thinks, somebody shot me in the leg, I might as well shoot myself in the balls. No, if he's that stupid, then fuck him too.
We'll always find this person, this system of philosophy, to be repulsive.
Yeah, well, I find, likewise. I'm rubber, you're glue, fucker. You're disgusting, you nihilist motherfucking piece of shit. You're too stupid to figure out suffering matters. I don't know it's valuable. I can't figure it out. It's too complicated. Sentient things? I don't know. What the hell is that? I like round ball. Round red ball. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's what I'm horny for. That's what has value. Round ball. Round ball has value. Humans don't. Animals don't. Fuck you.
And disgusting, right? And I think that Western civilization there is a latent anti-natalism that informs the whole of Western civilization in the desire for comfort, if you will. And if in this decadence, right? If this is...
Yeah, decadence. The decadence of not imposing on children. Right. The decadence of minding your own business and maybe finding something else to do with your parts besides impose on something else to gain your pleasure. The decadence of, yes, not imposing on somebody else to gain your pleasure. That's now decadence. We know it's decadence. We know it's decadent. We know it's decadent is people who have a horny because they have to, my name has to be in the future. Right? That's the trivial reason they have for having kids. Right? Just to get their name into the future. Just to get their name into the fucking future. That's the trivial, decadent bullshit that motivates these assholes. And you're going to call us decadent? Fuck you again. Goddamn.
If mankind so decomposes, then I say, hand me the button and I'll push the fucking thing myself.
Well, there you go. So you can have a standard, you can have a definition for when it's insufficient, when it's too fucktard, when it's too idiotic, but we can't. So that doesn't make any sense, right? You just conceded the goddamn argument all over the place. You can't sit there and say, oh yeah, I have a standard, my standard's like a millimeter higher than your standard.